The sound of paper tearing is distinct. It's a dry, rasping sound. Standing in the driveway of a $4 million mansion, that sound was the only thing I could hear. It echoed louder than the distant hum of the landscaping crews or the chirp of the birds in the manicured hedges. Richard, a man wearing a crisp white polo shirt tucked in salmon-colored shorts, was ripping up the repair estimate I had just handed him. He didn't just tear it once. He tore it into halves, then quarters, then eighths. He did it slowly, maintaining eye contact with me the entire time. Then, with a flick of his wrist that cost more than my entire wardrobe, he let the pieces flutter down onto his pristine lawn like confetti. He took a sip of his scotch. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, and laughed. A wet, dismissive chuckle that bubbled up from a chest that hadn't seen hard labor in decades. "You got to be kidding me," he said, looking at my mud-stained work boots. "You come to my house, interrupt my afternoon, over a scratch on a 2008 Honda Civic? Buddy, I spilled more than $800 worth of wine at dinner. Sue me. I'm rich. Now get off my property before I call the cops and have you arrested for trespassing." I looked at the pieces of paper on the grass. Then I looked at Richard. I adjusted my glasses. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of freshly cut grass, expensive cologne, and arrogance. I kept my hands in my pockets. I clenched my fists, feeling the calluses on my palms, reminding myself of who I am now. I had made a promise to my wife, Elena, on her deathbed 3 years ago. She made me swear that I was done, that the beast was buried, that I was just Alexei, the landscape architect, just a father, just a man who plants hydrangeas and worries about the frost. "Richard," I said, my voice calm, almost monotone, "I'm trying to handle this respectfully. Your son, Braden, keyed the word trash into the hood of my daughter's car. There are witnesses. There's Snapchat video. The school principal called me. I'm not asking for a lawsuit. I'm not asking for criminal charges. I'm asking you to pay for the paint job. That is all." To understand why I was holding back, to understand the sheer force of what it took for me not to step across that threshold and dismantle Richard's world, you have to understand my daughter, Maya. She is 17. She is the spitting image of her mother. Soft eyes, fierce heart, and a smile that can light up a dark room. But unlike the kids in this neighborhood, Maya works. She doesn't get an allowance. She doesn't have a credit card linked to my bank account. She works weekends at Sal's Bakery, getting up at 4 a.m. to knead dough. She saves every tip, every dollar, every coin she finds in the couch cushions. It took her 2 years to save up $4,000. She bought that silver Honda Civic from a neighbor. It had high mileage. The AC didn't work perfectly. But to her, it wasn't a used car. It was Sylvia. It was freedom. It was the physical manifestation of her independence and her work ethic. She polishes it every Sunday in our driveway. She bought special seat covers for it. When she came home from school yesterday, she wasn't just crying because the car was damaged. She was sobbing, a deep, guttural sorrow that shook her small frame. She felt violated. Braden, Richard's son, had been harassing her for months because she refused to go to prom with him. Keying the car was his revenge. A spoiled brat destroying something he couldn't understand the value of, simply because he was told no. When I saw the car, I felt the old sickness rise in my stomach. The word trash was carved deep into the metal of the hood. It wasn't just a scratch. It was malicious. It was violent. I ran my fingers over the jagged metal, and for a split second, the world tilted. The vibrant colors of the suburbs faded into the gray, grainy filter of my past. I remembered the weight of a lead pipe. I remembered the sound of breaking glass in Brighton Beach. I remembered the feeling of being the man who collected debts that couldn't be paid with money. But then I looked at Maya. She was terrified, not just of the car, but of me. She knows my history, vaguely. She knows I used to be a hard man. She needed her father, not the enforcer. "Don't worry, Solnishko," I told her, using the Russian term for little son. "I will talk to his father. Man to man. We will fix it." So here I was, standing in front of Richard. I had put on my flannel shirt. I had put on my work boots. I drove my beat-up Ford F-150 over to the gated community on the hill. The guard at the gate had looked at my truck with suspicion, only letting me in because I told him I was there for an estimate. I looked like a gardener. I looked like a nobody. And that is exactly what Richard saw when he opened the door. He saw a man he could crush. He saw a man he could dismiss. He didn't see the history. He didn't see the scars under the flannel. He didn't see the reason why I walk with a slight limp in my left leg, or why I never sit with my back to a door at a restaurant. Richard stepped off his porch and walked right up to me, invading my personal space. He was trying to intimidate me. It was almost cute. He smelled of alcohol and entitlement. "Let me explain something to you, Gardner," he sneered, poking a finger into my chest. "My son is a high-spirited boy. He's a leader. He's going to an Ivy League school next year. I'm not going to have a mark on his record because your daughter drives a piece of junk that belongs in a scrapyard. Maybe if you work harder, you could buy her a car that doesn't look like a soup can." He laughed again, looking back at the house where his son, Braden, was watching from the window, smirking. I saw the boy holding his phone up, probably recording the interaction for his friends. Look at my dad telling off the poor guy. He was probably captioning it. I felt the old rhythm in my chest, the cold, reptilian slowing of the heart rate. It's a reflex. When you spend 20 years as a senior enforcer for the Volkov organization in New York, your body learns to react to threats differently. You don't get angry. You don't get hot. You get quiet. You get surgical. I fought the urge to grab his finger and snap it like a dry twig. I fought the urge to show him exactly how much work I had done in my life. I fought the urge to burn his world down. "My job is not the issue, Richard," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The issue is responsibility. You are raising a man who thinks he can destroy property without consequences. That is a dangerous lesson. It is a lesson that ends in tragedy." Richard's face turned red. The vein in his neck bulged. He wasn't used to people talking back to him. He was used to people nodding, bowing, and taking the scraps he threw them. "Don't you lecture me about danger, pal. Do you know who I am?" He spread his arms wide, gesturing to the sprawling subdivision around us. "I built this neighborhood. I own the construction firm that poured the foundation for the new police station. I have lunch with the chief of police every Friday. I sit on the board of the zoning committee. If I make one phone call, you aren't just leaving without a check. You're leaving in the back of a squad car. I chew up little contractors like you for breakfast and spit them out before lunch." There it was. The connection. Construction. I looked at him closely. I analyzed him like a structural engineer analyzes a load-bearing wall. He wasn't a mobster. He was a civilian who played with the big boys. He was a developer who signed contracts, rubbed elbows with union delegates, and probably thought he was a tough guy because he shouted at foremen and cut corners on safety regulations. But if he was in major construction in this city, specifically dealing with foundations and concrete, he knew the history. He knew who controlled the concrete unions in the 90s and early 2000s. He knew the legends. He just didn't know the faces. I decided to test the waters. I decided to see just how deep his knowledge went. "Construction," I repeated softly. "You work with the unions, then? The Local 42? The Steelworkers Alliance?" Richard puffed his chest out, taking the bait hook, line, and sinker. "I own the Local 42, buddy. They jump when I say jump. I have the business agents on speed dial. I have guys who handle labor disputes for me. You think you're tough? I deal with real tough guys. I deal with the guys who buried Hoffa." He grinned, thinking he had won, thinking he had scared the gardener with his proximity to the underworld. I nodded slowly. "Local 42. Interesting. Then you remember the strike of 98. You remember when the concrete stopped pouring for 3 months. You remember the men who came in to settle the disputes. You remember the rumors about the cleaners from Brighton Beach, the men who worked for the Volkov family." Richard rolled his eyes, taking another sip of his scotch. Yeah, the Russians. Ancient history, mythologies, ghost stories to scare the apprentices. What's your point? You gonna tell me you know a guy? You gonna tell me you saw a movie once?" "I don't know a guy, Richard," I said. "I was the guy. The air changed. The wind seemed to stop. The birds went silent. I slowly unbuttoned the cuff on my right sleeve. I did it methodically. 1 button, 2 buttons. I rolled the flannel up, past the wrist, past the thick scar from a knife fight in 1995, past the elbow. I have many scars. But on the inside of my forearm, stark against the pale skin that rarely sees the sun anymore, is a tattoo. It isn't a generic skull or a dragon. It is an 8-pointed star, the Vor star. But inside the star, there's a specific symbol, a gavel crossing a scythe. This was not a tattoo you got in a parlor on the boardwalk. This was a tattoo earned in blood. It was the unit insignia for the Volkov enforcement arm, specifically the cleaners, the men who handled the problems that the police couldn't touch, and the problems that the other families were too afraid to handle. In the construction world, especially among the older union bosses and the major developers, seeing that star on a man's arm is like seeing a grim reaper standing on your porch. It means the negotiation is over. It means the verdict has been rendered. Richard looked down. He saw the ink. At first, he looked confused. He squinted through his buzz. Then recognition hit him like a physical blow to the stomach. His eyes went wide. His pupils dilated. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The glass of scotch slipped from his fingers. It hit the driveway and shattered, splashing amber liquid over his expensive loafers and his white socks. He didn't even notice. He didn't jump. He was frozen. He was staring at the tattoo. He was remembering the stories. He was remembering the guys who used to walk on at job sites in tailored suits, whisper one sentence to the foreman, and shut down a $100 million project in 5 minutes. Or worse, the guys who made people disappear into the wet concrete of the foundations he claimed to own. The gavel, Richard whispered. His voice was trembling. It was a whisper of pure, unadulterated terror. Volkov, you're one of them. I thought. They said you were all gone. Rico, the feds. They said everyone was in federal prison or dead. I rolled the sleeve back down slowly, covering the star. I buttoned the cuff with the same methodical pace. Not everyone, Richard. Some of us retired. Some of us made promises to our wives to live a quiet life, to plant hydrangeas, to raise our daughters in peace, to never pick up a weapon again. I took a step closer to him. He flinched, stepping back, so fast he almost tripped over his own feet. He looked like he wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't work. I'm a landscape architect now, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream. I plant trees. I trim hedges. I pay my taxes. But today, you made a mistake. You mistook my patience for weakness. You laughed at my daughter. You tore up my polite request. And you told me to sue you. I paused, letting the silence crush him. I let the weight of my past hang in the air between us like a guillotine blade. I don't sue people, Richard. In my old life, if someone insulted my family, I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call the police. I called a cleaning crew. Do you want me to be the landscape architect? Or do you want me to be the man from 1998? Richard was shaking, visibly shaking. Sweat was beading on his forehead and running down his nose. His arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the primal fear of a prey animal looking at a predator. No, sir. Please. I didn't know. Mister, he stammered, trying to find a title that would save him. Alexei, I said. Just Alexei. Mr. Alexei, please. It was a misunderstanding. My son, he's an idiot. He's a stupid, spoiled kid. I had no idea. If you had known, you would have treated me with respect. I interrupted him. That is the problem, Richard. You only respect fear. You don't respect people. Richard turned toward the house and screamed, his voice cracking with panic. Braden, get out here. Right now. The scream was desperate. It was the sound of a man trying to save his life. Braden came out the front door, looking confused. He was holding his phone, still recording. Dad, what's going on? Did you kick the loser out? Did the cops come? Richard ran up to his son. He didn't hug him. He slapped the phone out of his hand. It clattered onto the concrete porch and cracked. Shut up. Richard screamed. Shut your mouth. You get down there and you apologize to this man, right? Now, Braden looked at his father, shocked. He had never seen his dad like this. Richard was usually the king of the castle, the loudmouth, the bully. Now he was trembling, pale, and deferential. Dad, it's just a scratch. Braden whined, looking at me with confusion. It is not just a scratch. Richard grabbed Braden by the collar of his designer shirt and dragged him down steps. You insulted his family. Do you have any idea what you did? Do you have any idea who this is? Richard shoved his son toward me. Apologize. On your knees if you have. Me too. I held up a hand. I don't need him on his knees, Richard. I don't want his humiliation. I want his understanding. I looked at the boy. Braden, I said softly. The boy looked at me. He saw the way his father was acting. He looked into my eyes and saw something there that scared him more than any shouting match. He saw the void. I'm sorry, he mumbled, looking at his shoes. I shouldn't have done it. Louder, I said, and look me in the eye. Braden looked up. His lip quivered. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have touched your car. It won't happen again. I swear. I nodded. I turned back to Richard. He was wringing his hands, looking at me with pleading eyes. Sir, the car. The Honda. We won't paint it. Forget the paint. I'll buy her a new one. Brand new. Whatever she wants. A Mercedes? A Porsche? I have connections at the dealership. I'll write the check right now. Cash. I have cash in the safe inside. Please, just accept it as a gesture of goodwill. I looked at him for a long moment. I let him sweat. I let him wonder if I was going to accept the car or if I was going to make a phone call that would end his career. Maya likes her Honda, I said. She worked hard for it. She doesn't want a Porsche. A Porsche is a car for people who want to show off. Maya wants a reliable car. She wants a car she can drive to work. I paused. But Sylvia is ruined. The memory is tainted. She needs a fresh start. Richard nodded frantically. The dealership down on Main Street, he stammered. They have a black 2024 Civic in showroom. Touring edition. Leather seats. Top safety rating. I know the owner. I can have it here in an hour. Make it 45 minutes, I said. Paid in full. Title in my daughter's name. Delivered to my driveway. Richard nodded so hard I thought his neck would snap. Done. Consider it done. 45 minutes. Less. And Richard, I added, stepping closer one last time. Yes. Yes, sir. If my daughter ever comes home crying again because of this boy, if I ever hear that he looked at her the wrong way, I won't come back as a gardener. I won't come back alone. And we won't be talking about cars. Do you understand? Crystal clear, Richard whispered. He won't even look at her. I'm transferring him to St. Jude's next semester. He's gone. You will never see him again. I nodded. Good choice. I turned around and walked back to my truck. I didn't look back. I didn't rush. I walked with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who owns the ground he walks on. As I opened the door of my beat-up Ford pickup, I heard Richard screaming at his son in the driveway. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was fear. You could have got us killed. You stupid, arrogant idiot. Do you know what the star means? Do you know what he used to do? I drove home in silence. The radio was off. I needed to decompress. I needed to push the beast back down into the dark box where I keep him. I breathed in. I breathed out. I thought of Elena. I didn't hurt him, Elena, I thought. I didn't break a single bone. I just showed him the truth. When I pulled into my driveway, Maya was sitting on the front steps. She looked anxious. She stood up as I approached. Dad, did he yell at you? Is he going to sue us? I looked up the laws, and maybe we can claim. I sat down next to her on the step. I put my arm around her shoulder. No, Solnishko. We had a nice talk. He realized that his son made a mistake. He realized that he was being unreasonable. Maya looked at me skeptically. Really? That guy? He looked like a monster. He was just a bully, Maya, I said. And bullies are always cowards when you stand up to them. At 4:40 p.m., 5 minutes early, a flatbed truck pulled up to our small house. It was carrying a brand new, jet black 2024 Honda Civic Touring. It gleamed in the afternoon sun. The driver, a nervous-looking man in a suit who I assumed was the dealership manager himself, hopped out. He walked up the driveway with a thick envelope. "Mr. Volkov?" he asked, looking at his clipboard with shaking hands. "Alexei," I corrected. "Just Alexei." "Right. Alexei." Mr. Richard wanted this delivered immediately. Priority rush. He covered the tax, title, registration, and prepaid insurance for THRE. Years. He handed me the keys. He handed me the envelope. Inside was the title, already transferred to Maya. And clipped to the title was a handwritten note on Richard's personal stationery. It was shaky, the handwriting of a man whose nerves were shot. It simply said, "With deepest respect, I'm sorry. It will never happen again." I handed the keys to Maya. She stood there, frozen. She looked at the car, then at me, then at the car again. "Dad, is this real?" "It's real, honey. It's yours." Richard wanted to apologize. Properly. Maya screamed. A happy, high-pitched scream of disbelief. She ran to the car. She opened the door. She smelled the new leather. She touched the steering wheel. She cried again, but this time they were tears of joy. She hugged me so hard I almost lost my balance. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you. How did you do this? What did you say to him?" I kissed the top of her head. I looked at the tattoo under my sleeve, hidden by the flannel. I felt the weight of the past, but for the first time in a long time, it felt light. I just reminded him of the value of hard work, Maya, I said softly, and the importance of good manners. Maya named the new car the Black Pearl. She drives it everywhere. She is proud of it, but she is prouder that her father fixed it. And Braden? I haven't seen him, but I heard from the neighbors that Richard put his house on the market the next week. A pocket listing, they call it. Quick sale. Cash only. Apparently, he decided he wanted to move closer to the city, or maybe further away, maybe to another state entirely. He told the neighbors he wanted to be closer to his business interests. But I know the truth. He moved because every time he looked at his driveway, he saw the shattered glass of his scotch. He saw the ghost of a man with a star on his arm. He saw the reality that his money couldn't protect him from everything. He moved because he learned a lesson that day. A lesson that the construction unions learned in 1998. You can be rich. You can be loud. You can be powerful. But there is always someone quieter. There is always someone who doesn't see a. Read about your money. I'm back to my hydrangeas now. I am back to my pruning shears and my mulch. I'm just a gardener. I'm just a father. But sometimes when the wind blows through the trees just right, I rub my left forearm. I feel the ink under the skin. And I remember that even though the beast is buried, he is never truly gone. He is just sleeping, waiting for the next bully to wake him up. But for now, the garden is quiet. And that is enough.